Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Naram Promotions, the Real Deal podcast show. I must apologize for the late start. It is a holiday weekend here. It's the Labor Day weekend, and I had to take the time out to make sure that I cover this subject in the proper way. So the hit by hit, blow by blow, I had to make sure I covered it objectively so I can bring to you my opinion and my review of the third election, and that was the third and final Jamaican electoral debate. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a packed show. However, I'm so disappointed, as I said in previous podcasts, that I'm I'm sure that the three other parties, there's five parties that are represented on the ballot, and the three other parties were never represented in the three debates, and they're on the ballot. And I'm sure they were disenfranchised, and it's a missed opportunity for the Jamaican voters to hear what they really have to say, because this was the biggest platform prior to election day. That's September 3rd, and I'm wondering why the debate commission did not include them. It is democracy, and we would like to see these other parties exercise their right for the people to hear what they have to say in terms of leading the people, leading the economy of Jamaica. This was not represented. As you can see, I'm wearing my shirt. Let me clear the stage here of all impediments so you can see me clearly. So I'm going to take off. It's Jamaica's election third and final debate, and it's my review. So that it's my opinion. So it's not. I'm not doing this to sway any voter to one party or the other. I'm giving my opinion based on what I've seen. I've heard a lot of pundits, especially a gentleman by the name of Oral Tracy the Maverick, who erred on the side of caution. I don't know if he have a friend in I two party, They have to protect himself. But he erred on the side of caution and called it a draw, which was absolutely wrong, in my opinion, that is. So please like, share, subscribe, comment, because this is going to be electric, and it's a packed show, and I'm going to do the review about this debate. Let's get this off the stage right now and clear the air. So in true Naram fashion, we are going to give two jokes. Yeah, I'm going to give two jokes to set the tone of this review. Ladies and gentlemen, this is absolutely amazing, because this is on the cusp or on the verge or on right there before the voting starts on September 3rd. The voting starts today, and I'm telling you, there was a little issue that I understand that they changed the voting stations for the JDF, and also I think the JCF as well, that they had to now move into other to Kingston to vote. That was unprecedented. Also, there was so much bomb threats in Jamaica that it caused the security forces to be on high alert, and also they were called into duty. So what percentage of the security forces voted? Because in my history and my memory, wherever the security forces voted in majority, normally that's the party that wins. So was this by design? Was this a sabotage? I don't know. But this was unprecedented today, where the security forces were supposed to vote, but their voting station was moved, and also they were called out to secure other locations because of so many threats. I'm telling you, something is not right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the jokes. So, therefore, let's dive into this. And also, I want to mention that the all part hourly workers, don't feel that we have forgotten you. Remember, I'm going through some medical issues, and I'll be announcing to you very soon the date I'll be coming there to address the situation. So don't feel disenfranchised. But we're going to cover the election now, and tomorrow is normal programming. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the first joke to set the tone. Here we go.
It is not your birth that makes you.
So as you can see on the screen, as the PM said in the debate, being born in Jamaica does not make you Jamaican, and that was a mistake on his part. He missed a lot of golden opportunities, and let's bring that off the stage and bring up the next joke. Here we go, and this has to do with the three blind mice. Here we go.
I do not know it. Me neither. For some reason, I think blood.
God Almighty, this looks serious, man.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. So I'm going to give you a blow by blow. Um, this is a blow by blow analysis of what happened in the debate. So it is critical that we look objectively on what happened in the third debate. You get what I'm saying? So this was the debate. If you remember my last podcast, I said it was hard to determine whether or not the two first debates moved the pendulum. I think it was even Steven. If you remember what I said in my podcast, and I reserved my opinion. I said it will take the leaders of the two major parties. And I also asked, where was the other three parties in all of this? Their voices were not heard, and they were disenfranchised. That's a big, big deal. So I did not expect that the Jamaica Debates Commission would have omitted them from the debates. It's a democracy. They're on the ballot, and no mention was made of them. There's no explanation why they were not there. And you have the JPP with 47 candidates looking to get your votes. Why weren't they not there? Why was the UIC not there? Why weren't the independents not there? Excuse me. Why was this so? But we have a packed show for you tonight, and that was unfair to the other three registered parties. They are registered, ladies and gentlemen, and they're looking for your votes. They're on the ballot. Why were they not represented at the debate? Why were they not included? There was no area that was carved out for them. There was no area that was carved out for them. That means they were not included, but they're on the ballot. They're registered. So that needs to be addressed because September 3rd is the election day. That's when you cast your vote. And votes are now being casted by the security agencies, JDF, JCF, and so on. They casted their vote today, and many of them have been disenfranchised by the sudden relocation of their voting precinct. There was also a threat that they had to respond to. So that means, did all of them vote? I don't think so, because they were on duty. This does not sit well with me. So therefore, let's focus on the third debate and this was the theme was leadership. And I want you to listen carefully. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and click that notification bell. Comment, please, because we would like to hear your comment, but be respectful. Be absolutely respectful, or I will have to block you if there's disrespect in the comment. Be objective, ladies and gentlemen. You can voice your opinion, and we can take it here. This is Naram Promotions, the Real Deal Podcast Show. Welcome back to each and everyone who is watching, and we say we love you. So let's dive in, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive into the debate. You know, I looked at it, and there was about, let's see, let me look at my notes, because I just finished my notes. And there were 22 questions, and the 23rd was the closing statement. So if you can count, because I did. And the first question was Dion Jackson Miller, who she asked a question about taking the Auditor General off the Integrity Commission. This was a critical question, and I do believe that the Prime Minister missed a golden opportunity to really lay out his position and also to bring forward before, at the beginning of the debate, the corruption that is levied on him and all the investigations that were going on. He missed that golden opportunity. He was the one who should have put it forward and bring it to the public and say and state that this is an attack on the Prime Minister and the Jamaica Labour Party. He missed that opportunity. Why did he miss that opportunity? That's the question you got to ask here. So let's bring on stage this first question. I'm not going to go through all of the debate, but I'm going to touch on the segments of the debate that I think the PNP gained a point, and the JLP gained a point. So each question is 1 point in my analysis, and the closing arguments I gave 3 points to the winner. And then we're going to figure out who was the winner of the debate. Okay? So let's go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go with question 1. Then I'm going to move to question 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, then 13, 14, 15, 16, then 18, and then 20, 21, 22, and the closing arguments 23. Then I'm going to give my summary, and then I'm going to tell you who I thought win. So it's a packed show. So buckle up and get ready. Here we go. So this was the first question of the debate. And both candidates, I must say, looked and articulated themselves as leaders. But we give the edge to Andrew Honus. But he lost that edge during the debate. But in his opening, it was clear he was the more aggressive. It was clear that he was the more assertive. It was clear that Mark Golding was the calmer of the two. And this is about leadership. So let's not miss the point here. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into this. And it's queued up. So let's go.
And it will be directed to Dr. Andrew Holness.
Dr. Holness, government members have recommended taking the Auditor General off the Integrity Commission. There have been changes made by your administration to the Office of Political Ombudsman that have virtually destroyed its effectiveness as a check on the behavior of politicians. And there have been constant attacks by members of your administration on the Integrity Commission and on media and civil society groups that criticize your administration. Shouldn't Jamaicans be concerned about what appears to be a pattern by your administration of undermining oversight bodies in the public sector, civil society, and media?
There is absolutely no attempt by my administration and indeed myself to undermine any oversight body. Indeed, we have acted to strengthen and make them far more efficient. In placing the oversight of the political ombudsman under the office of the Electoral Commission, that's a move to strengthen and give it far more institutional framework. I myself have been very complimentary and acted in a very dignified way as it relates to the Integrity Commission.
So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. He finished talking right here. 56 seconds were left. This 56 seconds was very crucial to his arguments. This was about integrity and corruption. And he should have taken this 56 seconds to bring it forward about the attacks on his integrity and the corruptions that were levied on him. Now, you can give me your comments in the comment section, but I think this was a missed opportunity for him. So let's listen to Mark Golding.
Mr. Golding will have the opportunity to respond.
There has been a definite pattern of hostility from the Jamaica Labour Party government towards the institutions mentioned in the question, in particular, the Integrity Commission, largely because it is well known that there are at least 10 members of parliament who are under investigation for illicit enrichment, a serious corruption offence, of which the only one to be known is the one for whom a report has been completed and sent to the parliament, which is you, Andrew. As a result of that, they have done their very best to try to neuter that critical institution, including the Prime Minister bringing that institution to court to undermine its effectiveness and indeed eliminate it entirely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this was Mark Golding's first response to the question, and he had 45 seconds. The damage he created here is immeasurable because it sets the tone for the entire debate. So I gave this first question to the PNP. This is PNP 1 point, because he laid out in 45 seconds an accusation that can be proven through social media and the media of what the Prime Minister was facing but the Prime Minister gave up 54 seconds to bring it to the forefront first. He should have struck first and said, these were the things that were levied at me, and these are unfounded accusations. And there was no proof that he was corrupt. He should have brought that argument in the beginning. And he lost on that first one because absolutely the opposition, Mark Golding, was on point. He set the tone for the entire debate, and that was number one. So question number two had to do with the increasing the income tax threshold to 3.5 million, and they're saying it was impractical and impossible for the opposition to do it. Both points, answers to that question were credible. However, the PNP had a stronger point, but I call it a draw. That's number two, so that was a draw. So question number three was from Shania, and this was from Instagram, and it says it went to the fact that Jamaicans. The question was, it went to that position that many Jamaicans refused to vote, and there was a distortion in the transmission. I wonder why, but in actual fact, it had to deal with corruption. However, the opposition, both as I said, that's number three. Okay, many Jamaicans refused to vote. It was a corruption call. However, the opposition drilled down, and their argument was credible. I'm not going to touch on it because it is in line with the first question, and the PNP gained a more credible argument on that. So that was point number two. So there was 2 points to the PNP and a draw. So at question number three, but we're going to go to question number four, which talks about increasing the income tax threshold, and we're going to move on. We're going to flow through from there, straight through to about 5 other questions from there. So let's go, ladies and gentlemen. Let me move the pendulum here. So let's do this. Question number 4. It was 50. Let's go. Let's move this up to 50 and 15. Okay, here we go. Kind of cue this up properly. Here we go.
We now ask Dion Jackson Miller to start this segment with a question for Mr. Mark Golding.
Going back to the income tax proposal, Mr. Golding, because several people have been taking issue with your numbers. The PNP's assertion that it can fund the proposal through projected revenue growth doesn't seem to take into, as well as organic revenue growth, doesn't seem to take into account increase in expenditure that's also projected, as well as low growth rates that no government in recent years has managed to overcome. Isn't it true that your numbers just don't add up?
The fiscal policy paper does project over the next 3 years some $160 billion of additional revenue. The degree to which there are accompanying expenses will depend on how we manage the expense side of the budget. There's also the fact that there's $360 billion of programs in the budget that represent the priorities of a given government at a particular point in time. When we are elected, we're not going to be elected to maintain the current trajectory that Jamaica is on. People want to see change. And most fundamentally, the issue really is the fact that we are coming to the end of the period of austerity, the period where Jamaica has been for 13 and a half years, steadfastly paying down debt. So that the debt to GDP ratio, which we inherited at 147% of GDP at the beginning of 2012, is now, in this fiscal year, projected to achieve the target of 60% of GDP. Once that happens, we no longer have to reduce debt as a priority. We just have to maintain that debt profile. That will release resources of 2.5% to 3% of GDP, which is close to $90 billion of additional resources, which no longer have to be part of your primary surplus target. So we will be able to fund our program quite comfortably come April next year when the fiscal year starts.
Dr. Holness,
You know, there is a song which says, when the rum tells you you're a big dancer. I don't know what the leader of the opposition was drinking. Firstly, the debt to GDP for this fiscal year is not projected to be 60%. It is projected to be 65% thereabouts. If the leader of the opposition is depending on growth to provide the revenues for $75 billion of expenditure, the country would have to grow between 8 and 10%, which has not done that since the 60s. Thirdly, yes, there are $300 billion of programs. What are these programs? Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
So at this point, at question number 4, I call it a draw because you have an idea from Mark Golding that this is how he's going to do it. But the Prime Minister is saying it can't be done. However, there's $300+ billion of stuff that they can move around. So therefore, one is unrealized and one is erring on the side of caution, but they're not giving a projection that this is flexible. So I call this a draw here. So we call this a draw. So let's move on to question number 5, which the JLP, it says, this was from Giovanni Dennis, and the JLP promised to fix the general election date in its first 100 days. Let's see what the outcome is of that question to Andrew Holness. Here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
Dr. Holness, you said on February 7, 2016 in Sam Sharp Square, Montego Bay, within our first 100 days in government, we will start the legislative process to fix the general election date in Jamaica. It's been 3,490 days since. In your May 2016 budget debate, you further stated the country should not be distracted by protracted periods of uncertainty. Yet, that's exactly what happened with this year's election. After 2 consecutive terms in office, you have failed to deliver on this promise. Why?
So let me pause there, ladies and gentlemen. This is the question that after the Prime Minister answered, he interrupted Mark Golding. And that was not a good thing. On the global stage, he's the Prime Minister for 9 years. He does not need to do that. And that was not a good showing on his part. But let's continue.
Your research into this matter, I respect the question, is incomplete. At the calling of the 2020 general elections, I explained to the public in Parliament that our government actually started work on fixed election date. And we found that it was inconsistent with our constitutional arrangements. And therefore, we did not include it in our 2020 manifesto. It is no longer a part of our platform. More to that, however, is the fact that in seeking to have all of these previous considerations included, we went about putting in place a constitutional reform commission that would bring all the considerations for constitutional reform under an expert review. That expert review was thwarted by the opposition. So yes, these considerations were considered from 2016, but the reality of our constitutional arrangement made us take a different route, which is to go to a comprehensive constitutional reform, which was frustrated by the opposition.
So he made a credible argument here. But I do believe this was where he became unhinged when he interrupted the opposition leader, Mark Golding, in his response. So therefore, this was not a good look on the global stage. He's the leader for the last 9 years of Jamaica. He does not need to do that because his track record should speak for himself, and he should be the most calm one in terms of what he has done and what plans he has for the future. So the burden is on the Prime Minister to bring forward his agenda over the last 9 years. So therefore, let's listen to Mark Golding, and you'll see the interruption as we go along, as we transition into question number 6. Here we go.
Over to Mr. Golding to respond.
Just before I respond, just to point out that Mr. Holness's data is not current. The Fiscal Commissioner issued a release, I think it was today actually, indicating that with the National System of Accounts being updated, GDP has been adjusted, and we're now at 62% of GDP. That's what the debt is at the end of March this year, and we will more than likely achieve 60% this fiscal year. No, please, you're not entitled to do that. The flip-flopping from the Prime Minister is manifest. They were supposed to have impeachment. There's no impeachment. Fixed election day, no fixed election day. Ring fencing the NHT, they have taken over $130 billion out of the NHT. Cannot be trusted.
So right here, ladies and gentlemen, based on the response from both parties, our party leaders, the PNP had the edge on this one, so I gave them another point. This was 3 points for the PNP, a draw, and no points for the JLP. At this point, you tell me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but that's my opinion. So therefore, let's move forward to question number 6 about the transition to a republic, and can these people assure this is not a distraction from the momentum of the Jamaican economy? So let's look at what was said here. Here we go.
Just reminding that there is a format to the debate and asking the debaters to respect the format to which they have agreed. It's now time to go to the next question. Social media. Amoy Harriet, over to you.
This question comes from Janine. Parliament has passed a constitutional amendment bill and a referendum bill to transition Jamaica into a republic. Could you clarify the economic and administrative implications of this transition and how you intend to ensure that the process doesn't distract from Jamaica's economic priorities like debt reduction, investment diversification, and public services?
That question goes to Mr. Golding first and then to Dr. Holness.
In answer to the question, we can whistle and ride. So we have done very well as a nation in reducing our public debt. We ensured that the fiscal rules were very strong with an algorithm, an equation in the fifth schedule to the Financial Administration Audit Act that determines the fiscal balance that must be hit by each year's budget. And that has ensured that successive governments have stayed on course to take it down to 60%. We can do constitutional reform.
This is where the transmission got interrupted.
Critical issues. And we have achieved that consensus yet on the critical issue of decolonization, in particular our final court, which is now the Privy Council, the King's Court, that makes orders in the name of the King, as opposed to the regional court, which has been established, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which Jamaica helped to design, helped to fund, and which has developed over the last 20 years a reputation for independence and excellence. There are aspects of the bills that are in Parliament now that we have big problems with. In particular, the fact that effectively it will allow the Prime Minister to appoint the President, because a simple majority of both houses will do it if we do not agree who that person is. I think that is wrong. I think that the President of the country must command the trust and confidence of both sides of the political aisle, and indeed the wider public.
Dr. Holness?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I think the Prime Minister recovered. This was, I want you to listen to his answer to this question about the transition to a republic. This was where he made a strong argument, and I do believe they're going to point here. Here we go.
To be clear, the bills before Parliament do not give the Prime Minister the ability to appoint the President. We are the party that have advanced the greatest, the process of repatriating our sovereignty. I am a Jamaican through and through, and I want to see my country's sovereignty represented by a Jamaican. It puzzles me as to why the opposition is trying to frustrate this. The opposition says we must always consult the people, yet they do not want to consult the people on a fundamental architecture of our society, our final court of appeal. They are inconsistent, they are hypocritical, flip-floppers. They were the ones who nudged, encouraged, and agreed with the government that a process should be started for the repatriation of our sovereignty. Midway the process, they have turned around to say they have challenges with it. What is it that they really want? Are you truly a Jamaican?
So, ladies and gentlemen, it was a strong argument here. And I must give the JLP and the Prime Minister this point. So this was the first point I found for the Jamaica Labour Party and the leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, the Prime Minister. So we're going to go into question 7, which talks about the PNP tax relief may introduce corruptions that were eliminated previously in previous years. And let's hear both leaders discuss and respond to this question. Here we go.
It's time for our next question. It is from Dion Jax Miller, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, the PNP is promising a tax break for small businesses for the first 3 years of formally incorporating, as well as a raft of other targeted tax relief measures. How do you respond to criticisms that your tax plan reintroduces inefficiencies, tax avoidance, and corruption into the tax system that have been eliminated over the past 15 years?
First of all, I think the Prime Minister repeated innuendo or direct attack which has been leveled by his party on my nationality. And, you know, I just wanted to just make it absolutely clear that I am indeed born
Is the content Rio Cobre water project, for which we are pulling 15 million gallons of water from the Rio Cobre per day. So we must protect that asset. And I give the public my sincere commitment that we will protect the Rio Cobre.
Mr. Golding?
Quickly, just to say that the JLP is not the only party to have reduced taxes. The PNP reduced the personal income tax rate from 33.33% to 25%. We reduced the GCT rate from 17.5% to 16%. There's been reductions of taxes on both sides. They plan to reduce, they say, income tax from 25 to 15, which is going to help the rich and the ministers who pay themselves 200+% pay increases. On the environmental issue, you are the one who overturned NEPA's decision not to grant a permit for the mining of the Dry Harbor Mountains, which is a very sensitive nature reserve. You're flip-flopping again, Andrew.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if we lost transmission. You can tell me in the comment section. I don't know what happened there, but my screen went blank while I was talking to you, and I realized that when I'm the only one in the studio, so I have to be switching screens. I realized the screen went blank. So I'm not too sure if you were hearing me or seeing me during the transmission, but at this point, both the opposition targeted the inefficiencies of the prime minister on the environment and the stuff that was going on with the Rio Cobre. This was a point that the PM should have taken initiative for. After 9 years of being in power, he should have made sure that these people not only were brought to court, but the rules were in place long early in his administration to avoid this from happening, and his promises for the future were not really founded on good grounds, because he had 9 years to deal with that, and he's a champion of the environment, and he should have dealt with that long before this period or the spills happening. So I gave that to the PNP, and they were at 4 points at this point, the JLP at 1, because I would have to go through point per point, coming down from point one, question 1, the PNP 1, 2, I say it was a draw. 3, the PNP 1, 4, it was a draw. 5, the PNP 1 at 3, 6, the JLP 1 point there. 7, I call the PNP on that one. 3 and 8 on the Rio Cobre. That was point number 4 for the PNP. So I know my screen went blank on that point. You can tell me in the comment section. Be respectful, because I will block you. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and click the notification bell, because I'll be back on tomorrow on regular programming, and I'll be mentioning a lot of this to you, my audience. I respect you. I love you. And let's continue to question number 9. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me in the comment section, what is your opinion on my analysis of each question? Because I'm going blow by blow, so I can tell you what my analysis and also conclusion is at the end. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue to question number 9. And this question is about, will the body worn cameras be a priority for the police? And does both parties agree that body worn cameras should be a part of their gear? So here we go.
Our next question is from social media. Over to Amoy Harriot.
Well, Archie, Delanor says many Jamaicans would like to see the full rollout of body-worn cameras on our police officers, even more so now, given the increase in fatal police shootings. Will this be something that you'll prioritize should you be elected?
Mr. Golding will respond first.
First of all, I think it's very important to acknowledge and commend the excellent work done by the police force over the last year and a half in bringing the rate of violent crime, in particular murders in the country, down from the intolerable levels where it had been under this government. More murders committed in Andrew Holness's 2 years in office than any other 2-year term in the history of Jamaica. The police have finally abandoned the failed policies that we did our best to stop, the mass use of states of emergency, which the court has ruled as unconstitutional, and have gone now to a much more targeted approach, a much more strategically sound approach. Having said that, we do feel that it's very important that the public as a whole must have trust and confidence in the police, because the police rely on intelligence and information from the public. And therefore, if the public feel that there's excessive use of force and there's no accountability for it, they're not going to be as cooperative as we need them to be. I think, therefore, it's in the interest of the Jamaican society and the police themselves to have the benefit of body-worn cameras, especially when they go on special operations. So there can be no question, nobody can accuse them wrongly of having used excessive force when the force was legitimate as used. And to the extent that there may occasionally be an excessive use of force, the persons are held accountable for that in accordance with the law. That's what the rule of law requires.
Dr. Holness?
The government is already in the process of procuring and acquiring body-worn cameras. Several thousands of them are under procurement and will be deployed shortly to the police force. We consider this as absolutely important in giving confidence to the public regarding the actions of the police force. And the police themselves want to have these cameras as protection for themselves. Interestingly, however, the leader of the opposition states that the states of public emergency did not work. Now, murders under the PNP increased to over 1,000 murders in 1997 and remained there for over 30 years. It is the Jamaica Labour Party in 3 consecutive years that have reduced murders by 55%. The states of public emergency worked. The states of public emergency were supported by the PNP when Peter Phillips was the leader of the opposition, and it reduced murders by 27%. Since we did not have the cooperation of the opposition, murders went up. A question must be asked: who is responsible for the increase in murders when there was a tool that could have saved lives?
Now, I believe that the Prime Minister gave the most credible response to this question, because they had actually and practically implemented the body-worn cameras. So you got to give it to Andrew Holness here, because his response was absolutely on point and it was practical because he championed that. The response from the opposition, Mark Golding, although credible, was not realized by the PNP. It was realized by the JLP party. So you got to give Andrew Holness here, and this was point number 2 for the JLP. Here we go. Let's hear from Mark Golding.
It is a serious question.
No, Giovanni Dennis has indicated that he would.
Yeah, so Giovanni Dennis will give a follow-up question about dual citizenship. Why not address it earlier? Why did not Mark Golding address his dual citizenship earlier? And this was a point of controversy, which, earlier he had shown his birth certificate, but the response here by both leaders was remarkable, because the Prime Minister became unhinged and he made a big mistake here, and it kind of rattled his pivot of balance. And this is where he kind of lost it. However, let's listen to this question and move on from this. This was question number 10. And remember, the JLP was at 2 points and the PNP was at 4 points at this point, according to my analysis. My opinion, tell me in the comment section if you are rating this differently from myself, and tell me why. Here we go.
I'd like to ask one of his two follow-up questions. I believe that question will go to
Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, I want to go back to the matter of your dual citizenship. It took days for you to confirm that you held dual citizenship and weeks for you to renounce it. Why didn't you acknowledge the issue upfront, and why should Jamaicans believe you will be forthcoming with them on any issue, even if it's uncomfortable in the first instance?
I didn't hesitate to acknowledge dual citizenship. I was born in Jamaica. I had a British father, and I inherited British citizenship by descent from him. And that's lawful under the laws of Jamaica. And indeed, parliamentarians in Jamaica are permitted to be dual nationals. I therefore didn't consider it to be something which was problematic. However, when it was raised last year and politicized, I decided I want to know what the Jamaican people felt about it, because I thought really my response ought to be driven by them. We did an internal poll. It showed that a majority thought I should renounce, and so I did. And I renounced my British citizenship in August last year.
Dr. Holt.
So this was a credible response, because all of this is credible. It wasn't so he wasn't born in the UK. He was born in Jamaica. So he inherited his dual citizenship from his father, which is credible argument. And since it became an issue, he denounced his British citizenship. So therefore, it's a credible argument. But let's listen to the response from the Prime Minister himself. Here we go. And this was where he made a mistake, a big mistake. He should have left it alone and moved on to the more important issue about the economy and leadership. Here we go.
Next, rebuttal.
You know, this is a strange one. A man who wants to represent his country must choose his country. He doesn't need to ask anyone. He should choose. And that's why we say we choose Jamaica. It is indeed of concern that it was not until your 40s, when you were becoming a minister of government, that you sought to have a Jamaican passport. It is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. It is the choices you make for your country, including supporting a process that would make a Jamaican head of state here, including getting a Jamaican passport.
And ladies and gentlemen, this was where it turned the tides, and this was where he was chasing his shadows and fighting to gain traction to get back into the game. At this point, I would say, and this question about dual citizenship, the PNP won on this question because Mark Golding's response was credible, but the response of the Prime Minister was not. And if I'm wrong, tell me in the comment section. Be respectful. But this is where the PNP is now at point number 5, and the JLP is at point number 2. They were ahead. So we're going to move into a very critical question about call centers. And this was from this is a social media question from Taj on TikTok. And let's move into that, because the JLP, the Prime Minister, really shine on this. Let's go.
Our next question is from social media. Over to Amoy, and that question will go to Mr. Golding.
On TikTok, Taj says, given the current negotiations surrounding the U.S. Keep Call Centers in America Act and its potential to impact over 50,000 Jamaican BPO workers, how does your administration plan to safeguard both employment and livelihoods for young Jamaicans if outsourcing opportunities decline?
That's a good question. And the truth is that the evolution of technology, especially the advent of artificial intelligence, is also a threat to the type of services that are provided through outsourcing. So we are going to have to ensure that we try and upskill our existing workforce so that they can be trained to do the type of tasks that technology isn't going to be as adept at dealing with as human beings. And we also have to provide other avenues for employment for young people. That's why we're going to establish the Youth Innovation Fund, which will provide grants and loans to young people to get them into business if they want to get into business. And it will enable them to pursue their talents in tech or in creative industries or any other area of endeavor so that they can express themselves, help to monetize their talent and build brand Jamaica. And so those are the types of things that need to be done. We also want to emphasize training and the role of the private sector in training. We'll be giving an incentive, a dollar-for-dollar matching of all businesses who invest in upskilling and training. We will match their investment through the HEART program to encourage them to invest further in training and upskilling the workforce so they can employ more people in higher paying jobs. Right now, too many of our people are struggling in low income jobs, low wage jobs, low tech jobs.
The same question goes to Dr.
Although Mark Golden's response was credible, however, it's not something that was realized. It is an idea. So therefore, it's a great idea when you're not in leadership. So on this point, let's listen to the Prime Minister, and I'll give you my opinion on at the end of it. Here we go.
Well, let me give you some practical and real answers instead of airy-fairy stuff. Jamaica is already positioning itself for nearshoring and friendly shoring of the recalibration of the global supply chain. And that is why we have made a massive investment in the Caymana's development and in Raintree. These are real investments that will bring production to Jamaica and jobs to Jamaica. We have already started to ensure that over 120,000 Jamaican youths can access training free of cost under HEART. And much of that training is in support of not just BPO, but logistics. But more than that, we saw the change in technology coming and the impact it would have. And that is why we have invested in a coding and technology academy, the Amber Heart Academy, where hundreds of Jamaican youth are trained in not just the basics, but as high up as data science. Because what we want to create in our society are the trained skills that can attract the jobs that we are already negotiating for. You have a government that understands the changing global dynamics.
Thank you, Dr.
And putting in
Honest.
place measures to take advantage of it.
So at this point, the Prime Minister made the more credible response because this is what they have done. The response from the opposition leader, Mark Golden, was an idea that is not realized. The Prime Minister has implemented strategies that to respond to this question, and they are in the process or have done this. So therefore, the JLP won on that 11th question about call centers and also the entire question there. So JLP was at 3, the PNP was at 5. So we have Dion Jackson Miller on question number 12. Does the PM support the removal of the Privy Council? Let's listen to that.
We'll now take a short break and we invite you to stay tuned.
Here we go. So
The general elections debates are presented by the Jamaica.
Up. Here we go. So we're going to move that up.
Segment with a question for Dr. Andrew Holness.
2021, you were appointed to the Queen's Privy Council and the Ancient Advisory Body, and your administration's recent attempt at constitutional reform would have seen the removal of the British monarch from Jamaica's parliament and executive in phase 1, but not from our judiciary. Opposition or no opposition, referendum or not, can you tell us your position, whether you support the removal of the Privy Council as Jamaica's final court, and if so, when?
My position is that Jamaica should have its own local court as its final appellate court. But I also do respect the Caribbean Court of Justice, of which we are a part of its original jurisdiction. I will say, however, that on a matter as important as this, that forms the architecture of our nation, the people must be consulted. And that is why I put in place a process that would begin these consultations in a practical and phased basis, a process which has been thwarted by the opposition. Now, the leader of the opposition raises questions about democracy. On one hand, he does not want to consult. He wants the government to just act without consulting with the people, but then turns around and says that we are the ones undermining democracy. The leader of the opposition must be consistent. Democracy requires us to consult the people on these critical matters.
Mr. Golding?
Yes, Mr. Holness, shortly before the visit of Prince William to Jamaica, became a member of the King's Privy Council. So one has to wonder how he was choosing Jamaica when he did that. Anyway, to answer the question, we want to follow the Constitution, and the Constitution has been ruled by the Privy Council as the highest court as not requiring a referendum for the decision as to whether or not the CCJ should become the final court replacing the Privy Council. And that is what we think ought to be done. No other country that has moved away from the Privy Council has had a referendum to do so, and there are good reasons for that.
So both leaders made a credible argument on this question. So this was a draw. Question number 12, in my estimation, and my opinion, was a draw. What do you say? Tell me in the comment section. Come on, guys. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and click the notification bell. Tell me in the comment section, what do you think on a blow-by-blow question? If my math is correct, at this point, at question number 12, the JLP were at 3 points and the PNP were at 5 points. Tell me, what do you think? Let's move on to question number 13, which Giovanni Dennis posed to Mark Golden, and he was talking about Julian Roberts agreeing with the salary increase, but he opposed it and threw Julian Roberts on the bus. Let's hear this. Let's go. Tell me in the comment section, what do you think?
Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, the PNP under your leadership has flip-flopped on a number of issues. For example, Julian Robinson on May 16, 2023, said the opposition takes no issue with the massive salary increase for parliamentarians. The very next day, the PNP released a statement objecting to the increase. Why should Jamaicans trust that you won't similarly make about turns on promises you are making now?
When Julian said that in Parliament, he was referring to the principle of parliamentarians getting an increase. He wasn't addressing the specifics of what was being proposed. We hadn't had a discussion around those specifics. When we looked at the details and we saw the massive increase that the Prime Minister was proposing for himself and for his ministers, we felt it was unconscionable to do that in the context where the public sector workers had just had their salary negotiations under some duress in relation to the teachers in particular, finalized, and many of them were getting 20% over 2 years. That is why we had to clarify our position, because it was not in accordance with what we thought that principle demanded. Now, over time, thinking can evolve. People change their positions on issues. So, for example, we are looking at this whole question of the 3.5 salary, the $3.5 million threshold increase. And we've seen where, as the debt target is achieved and resources can be released, it can be afforded. We weren't calling for 3.5 2 years ago, but we see that the need, inflation, etc., have happened. Cost of living pressures are there. Our evolution, our thinking has evolved, and we think that this is the right thing to do now, and we're committing ourselves to it. So, you know, I don't think the criticism is justified.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Dr. Holness now has...
I have to call out that the leader of the opposition is telling lies. Julian Robinson stood in Parliament and said he supported the increase. Clear, and the tapes are there. Secondly, he calls the increase unconscionable, yet he takes it. I, Andrew Michael Holness, did not take it. The option was available to him as well. I chose not to take it. The leader of the opposition says, I have 28 bank accounts. That is absolutely not true. The report of the Integrity Commission includes accounts that are closed, accounts that are dormant, insurance accounts, and investment accounts.
Thank you.
They have weaponized
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
So at this point, the Prime Minister made the most convincing argument and most forceful argument, and we have to give the JLP that. This is JLP 4, PNP 5 at this point in the debate. This was a strong point for the Prime Minister, and he really showed up on this question at question 13. So let's go to 14 by Dean Jackson Miller to Prime Minister Holness, and this was the post of the Director of Public Prosecution when the PM objected, and this was a betrayal argument. So here we go.
Yes. Our next question is from Dion Jackson Miller, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
Dr. Holness, in your 2016 manifesto, you said, quote, will make it mandatory that the appointment to sensitive posts be approved by a 2/3 majority in each House of Parliament, thereby requiring consensus between government and opposition. Now, the posts identified included the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. Not only did you not implement this, but you disregarded the opposition's objections in the case of the recent extension, which led to a court case. Wasn't this a betrayal of the principle of bipartisanship that you had been proposing 9 years before?
Absolutely not. And indeed, in some instances, there are parliamentary review of sensitive positions. And I want to be also very clear that the constitutional reform process that we have put in place would take into consideration all of these proposals that were made. We cannot tinker with the Constitution, doing a little thing here and a little thing there, and therefore we decided to put it in a comprehensive process, again, which the opposition has thwarted. But since I have some time, let me also address some other issues about the leader of the opposition. In my own Integrity Commission report published in Parliament, there are no findings of corruption. All my assets are in Jamaica, and I have declared everything to the Integrity Commission. The leader of the opposition, however, also had a report from the Contractor General previously, which found that they benefited from public resources in an irregular way. They termed it a sweetheart deal. In my report, there is no such thing. None of my resources are ever connected to any public funds or any public resources. However, for the leader of the opposition, the report was very clear that their operations were considered to be irregular and a sweetheart.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
So at this point, the corruption issue is still in the forefront and shadowing Prime Minister Honus. He should have, on the first question, he should have taken that opportunity to bring it forward, to bury that question altogether. And these answers should have been on the first question when he missed the opportunity on 54 seconds to make the point. Let's listen to the opposition as they respond. Here
Mr. Golding has an opportunity to respond.
The Prime Minister has no interest in bipartisanship. He has strong dictatorial tendencies and really would prefer not to consult with the opposition at all if he didn't have to. And I say that based on my experience with him over the last 5 years. He talks about he didn't want to tinker with the Constitution. Then why did he seek to amend the Constitution as a one-off, tabling the bill and seeking to pass it on the same day to extend the DPP's tenure beyond what was constitutionally allowed? That was tinkering, Prime Minister, so come on. And in terms of Integrity Commission reports, my declarations have been certified every year as being proper. Yours have not, because you are under investigation for illicit enrichment.
Mr. Golding.
At this point, Mark Golding made the most credible response. And he was not under investigation, the Prime Minister was. So therefore, you can be the judge of it. But I gave this to the PNP. And prior to this, the JLP was at 4. The PNP was at 5. Now the PNP is at 6. After question number 14. So we're going to move into the next question, 15, with Dean Jackson Miller with a follow-up question. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Our follow-up question now, Deon Jackson Miller has indicated she'd like to use the first of her follow-up questions.
On the same issue of the DPP's appointment, Principal Dr. Holness doesn't require constitutional amendments, though. And if it is that you were committed to the principle of bipartisanship, why would you have rejected such strongly worded opposition coming from the opposition leader?
At the end of the day, this matter was taken to the court, and the courts decided, and the DPP was reinstated. I want to also clarify something that the leader of the opposition said. The investigations carried out by the Integrity Commission are at an end. I am not currently under any investigation. There were no findings of corruption or charges. The leader of the opposition continues to try to weaponize these things because that is the only crutch he has to stand on. I, Andrew Holness, am thoroughly transparent.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
Even though the Prime Minister's response was credible and strong, it was a little bit late. Because the first question, remember, was about corruption. And he should have buried it right there in those 54 seconds. Let's listen to the opposition, and I'll tell you who gained the point.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Again, Andrew Holness is being disingenuous and tricky. The Integrity Commission referred his matters to the Financial Investigations Division, a law enforcement agency charged with investigating serious financial crimes for further investigation. What was his response? When there was a vacancy at the head of it, he sought to appoint or influence the appointment of somebody who is his close personal friend and who had said publicly on nationwide radio that he didn't see anything wrong in the report on Mr. Holness's financial situation, the Integrity Commission's report. It was clearly a set-up job, and we feel that very strongly that this needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Golding.
So at this point, at question number 15, the corruption kept giving Mark Golding more points. The PNP had the better response because it's quite obvious that it is in the forefront and it is not addressed properly. And the Prime Minister had the opportunity in the first question to bury this in its entirety. So the PNP is now at question 15, and we're going to move into question 16 about the economic growth. They're asking about lower grocery bills and the measure of actions to lower grocery bills. So let's hear from both of them. Here we go.
Our next question is from social media. I'm going to hand over to Amoy.
Malik on Facebook says, many Jamaicans feel the economic growth that's been reported hasn't lowered their grocery bills or electricity costs. How do you measure economic success beyond the statistics?
Dr. Holness has the opportunity to respond first.
The first measure is income. And 280,000 jobs have been created in Jamaica, which means that more Jamaicans have income. There is a rise in income. Let's look at the minimum wage. The Jamaica Labour Party government has tripled the minimum wage. So there are more Jamaicans earning more at the lower levels of our country. Further, access to basic amenities. 350,000 Jamaicans have access to potable water. And in our next term, we will ensure that the 900,000 Jamaicans which now don't have reliable or full access to water will have access to water. Transportation, public transportation. We have done an amazing job in reducing bus fares and increasing the convenience and efficiency of public transportation, including implementing a rural bus fare system. On electricity, we have reduced the GCT on electricity, a promise made by the previous government and not kept. We have done it in a sustainable way. But more importantly, we have not placed any new taxes on the people of Jamaica since our government has been managing the fiscal affairs of this country.
Mr. Golding.
So even though this argument is credible, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the grassroots, down and nitty-gritty, the grocery for the poor people. He did not answer that question. How can you lower the grocery bill for those people and also grow the economy at the same time? You talk a good talk, yes, but you missed him, the Prime Minister missed a golden opportunity here to reach out to the small man, the families that are sending their children back to school for nothing, the fares that are high, the grocery bill were high, the prices were high. He missed a golden opportunity right here again, ladies and gentlemen. Let's listen to the opposition.
He has an opportunity to respond.
First of all, I think the question is sound because statistics don't tell the full picture. Jamaica's competitiveness has been falling, yet they say that we have record low unemployment. Several 100,000 Jamaicans are outside the labor force and are not measured for that purpose. And indeed, you're regarded as being employed if you're employed 1 hour a week. 55% of Jamaicans are suffering from food insecurity. That is what the United Nations says, the FAO, which is an agency of the UN, says. 55% of Jamaicans are not getting adequate nutrition. That is not consistent with prosperity or low poverty rates or low unemployment rates. As for transportation costs, those are extremely high for many Jamaicans, which is why we want to introduce the RIDE program, a subsidy for rural children to help them to get to school in an affordable way. It's $10,000 per child who needs it in each family. So if you have more than one child, each one of them would qualify for this, because we recognize that that is one of the causes of absenteeism in schools at the moment. As for electricity, the rate and cost of electricity under this government has gone way higher than where we left it at 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's over 40. And as for the GCT, they are providing a subsidy at the moment, but they haven't said for how long, and there's no commitment to keep it on.
Thank you, Mr. Golding.
So
we are now going to be taking a short.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Golding gave the most credible response because he went to the heart of the issues of the poor man. This is about the nitty-gritty down a grassroots desktop. When you talk about you try to find money for fare, you try to find money for food, you try to find money to send your picnic back to school, and you try to live. The light bill too tall, because JPS now work with it. He answered that question that pushed the PNP to point number 8 and the JLP at 4. So there was a 4-8 differential. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move to the question number 17. Give me your comment in the comment section. Be respectful. Tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I will admit. But in my estimation, the PNP is at 8, the JLP is at 4. At question 17, the PM, they were talking about hostility, and this was from Giovanna Dennis, a follow-up question to PM Honus, and he says the hostility towards the press. And I'm not going to cover that. That was a draw question at 17. Dean Jackson Miller on question 18 asked about the protection and the rights of those with disability. And we're going to start right there at question number 18. So let's move into that. Let's move this forward a little bit. Here we go. And let's get into that. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here we go.
This question is from Dion Jackson Miller, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, Coswell Barnett is a blind Jamaican who is also a very experienced and very qualified teacher, but who was out of a job for 4 years. Now, your manifesto promises to protect the right of persons with disabilities. Those Jamaicans are disproportionately affected by poverty. Vision 2030 says that governments haven't been living up to a reserve a percentage of public sector jobs for persons with disabilities. That would have helped people like Mr. Barnett and others like him. Would a PNP government implement such a recommendation?
Thank you for that question, Dion. I come from a family that has delivered transformational national service to the country, in particular in the area of persons with disabilities. My father was the first orthopedic surgeon in Jamaica, and he established what was then the Polio Center, became the Mona Rehabilitation Center. And when he died in 1996, it was named after him. It's now called the Sir John Golding Rehab Center. He also established the Hope Valley Experimental School, a school for integrated education for able-bodied and children with disabilities. 2 parliamentarians went to that school, and he established the National Road Safety Council, because of his awareness of the fact that many people who end up with disabilities is as a result of road traffic accidents. I am and we are very committed to implementing the UN Convention for the Persons with Disabilities, which Jamaica was the first country in the hemisphere to sign. And we are the ones who passed the Disabilities Act, brought it to Parliament. This government took 7 years to bring it into effect. We're glad it's in effect, but it needs to be actualized now in practice so that persons with disabilities feel and see the benefits of it. We are fully committed to that, and we are going to establish a National Disabilities Fund to aid persons with disabilities so that they can have their assistive aids, they can get help to establish themselves in business at home and improve sidewalks for their transportation. We are committed to the community of persons with disabilities.
So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, Mark Golding gave a great response. A good response. But let's listen to the Prime Minister on his response on question 18. And remember, the PNP was at 8 and the JLP was at 4 points at this point. In my estimation, this is question 18. Let's listen to the Prime Minister.
Dr. Holness has the opportunity to respond.
To be clear, one of the things that I'm very proud of is that my administration has reserved under special orders through the NHT houses for persons with disability. They have a direct access. Under the new social housing program, we make it a point of duty to support persons with disabilities, and many persons with disabilities have benefited. Our administration have brought into effect the Disabilities Act. We continue to support the disabled community with grants and an increase in path benefits. Our government is committed to supporting persons with disability in Jamaica.
This was a great answer from the Prime Minister. It was practical. It's things that they're doing. And what the opposition leader, Mark Golding, was, it's an idea. So it wasn't realized. So the Prime Minister is doing this. So he got the benefit of this question. And now he's at 5. Okay. This is about disability. So the JLP moved to 5 and the PNP is at 8 at this point. Question 19 was from Dean Jackson Miller about public sector jobs for persons with disability. Okay, so that was another draw question because both responses were credible. But we moved to question 20, and this was about the KSMC and NEPA regulations. Why no force for action for the development there was had by the Prime Minister. So let's move into that quickly and see what the response was. So let's go to that. Let's move that up just a little bit. Here we go. That's it.
Dr. Holness, communities like Charlemont, Birdsucker, Acadia, and many others across the corporate area have complained and have taken the government to court for inadequately regulated developments. Justice Hart Hines, in a 2021 ruling, said the KSAMC and NEPA have been dilatory in their mandate to enforce local planning laws and regulations. In December 2021, he said work was being done to restructure the entire approval process. Yet the issues persist. Why isn't more being done to force the KSAMC and the NEPA to do their jobs to enforce the building regulations?
When that comment was made, the situation was as you have said. Since then, there have been significant improvement in enforcement and including a new planning order for Kingston and St. Andrew, which clarifies many of the issues that were in contention, including we have included more inspection officers at the KSAMC, and there are more cases now being brought to court which are being prosecuted. So there has been an improvement. However, I believe that there is still much more work to be done in terms of increasing the enforcement capabilities. And yes, there are some legislative changes that need to be clarified, particularly as to how titles are issued and how densities are approved.
I believe he made a credible argument here, but look at it, ladies and gentlemen. 39 seconds is left for him to address the issue of his wife being in that circle and that circle of doubt. Listen to the opposition as the opposition responds. That's Mark Golding. Here we go.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Since the People's National Party assumed the leadership in the council of the KSAMC, the new Mayor Andrew Swaby has been pursuing internal governance reform, including persons from outside to try and improve standards and processes, make them more transparent and effective, so that the citizens of the corporate area can expect higher levels of governance. I think it's unfortunate that in the case of Mr. Holness and his wife, they are in the business of real estate development, or certainly she is, and that presents serious conflicts of interest which have manifested themselves in some of their own schemes that they've developed. I think we need to have rules which preclude that kind of activity so that there's no question of conflicts of interest.
So the biggest issue here was conflict of interest, and being that she's in that industry and also the Speaker of the House, it now becomes bold in front of the Jamaican people. And this here, Mr. Holness missed the opportunity to address it on those 38 seconds. Remember, he has left a lot on the table and he did not address it, and he should have been prepared for this because he knows it's no surprise what the opposition is going to come with. He knows. Why did he leave it on the table? Let's move on to question number 21 from Mark Golding, addressing the PNP, the Prime Minister, the PNP addressing the Prime Minister with a question about the Ponzi schemes and why should Jamaica trust the Prime Minister. And this is where it gets outrageous. Here we go.
We've come to the point in the debate when the debaters get an opportunity to ask each other questions. We begin. We invite Mr. Golding to ask a question of Dr. Andrew Holness.
Mr. Holness, the Integrity Commission...
hold on a second, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the question about corruption is still looming, which is not addressed properly from the stage of question 1. This is the closing part of the debate, and listen to what's going on here.
In their court filing in the case that you brought to try and strike down the act and eliminate the offense for which you are being investigated, have said that you had money in the Ponzi scheme Olint and you got it out, while others suffered losses. You had money in Cash Plus, another Ponzi scheme where people lost lots of money, you got it out. And of course, you had money in SSL, and you were able to withdraw your money before it collapsed. In fact, I would say the only person that Usain Bolt has not been able to catch up with is you. And I want to ask you, how do you think and why do you think the people of Jamaica should trust you to be in charge of the governance of the country for a 3rd term with that track record and with that cloud hanging over your head?
The leader of the opposition is a liar and cannot be trusted. I lost money in Cash Plus and Olint. However, the PNP accepted and received $1 million from Olint. He has no credibility to talk about Ponzi scheme. They benefited from the Ponzi scheme to fund their election campaign. He questions my wife's integrity about development. My wife and my family are hardworking Jamaicans. We started off with the taxes like many other Jamaicans, and I have worked hard. He has sought to weaponize that. But the people who receive me when I go into the country, they say, Andrew, don't worry. No weapon formed against you shall prosper.
Mr. Golding, your rebuttal.
At this point, ladies and gentlemen, 38 seconds was left for the Prime Minister to really take this last opportunity to bury the whole corruption issue. He had 3 opportunities from question 1 right down to the question before this to really bury it, and then he left 38 seconds again on the table to really make it to bury this issue. He did not. Let's hear from the opposition's response to this question that he posed to the Prime Minister. Let's hear his response.
I've made the point that for the Prime Minister and his wife to be in the real estate business when so many of the agencies of government which regulate that business fall under his Ministry of Economic Development and Job Creation creates the possibilities for conflicts of interest, and I stick by that position.
We now invite Dr. Andrew Holness.
Ladies and gentlemen, right there. Goodness gracious me. That seals the deal. Let's hear now from the closing. The Prime Minister giving his question to the opposition, and let's hear the response. Here we go.
To ask a question of Mr. Mark Golding.
The leader of the opposition speaks about integrity and trust. He was an advisor to a former Minister of Finance that put in place a policy of high interest rate, for which he acted as a broker for the government to invest loans and bonds for which he received a commission of high interest rate, to the point where one of his members described this as the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. He, the Toponaris lawyer, has made billions of this, yet he does not disclose this in his integrity report. In fact, he doesn't even have a house in Jamaica. How can we believe you? And do you have assets in overseas companies for which you have not disclosed?
So hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get back to question number 21, where Mark Golded asked the Prime Minister a question. The response from both sides, the PNP won that. I moved the PNP to 10 points at that point. And then we have the Prime Minister asking Mark Golded a question. Let's hear his response.
I've disclosed all my assets, and that's why my Integrity Commission declarations are certified. Your allegations are scurrilous and false. You made reference to DBNG, although you didn't call the name. DBNG was established in 1992 as an investment firm by 3 young Jamaican entrepreneurs. When the financial sector meltdown occurred some years later, and FinSAC was established as a response to try and protect the savers of this country so they didn't lose their money in their deposits in the banking system and their pensions and so on, DBNG, like other financial firms at the time, had to navigate that carefully to survive. We eventually were approached by a leading international bank, Scotiabank, who did a thorough due diligence on the company. It's a listed company where we were a listed company from inception. Our audited financial statements are public. Our quarterly financial statements are public. They looked at us inside out and upside down, found nothing, absolutely nothing untoward, and they bought the company. And we have nothing to hide on when it comes to DBNG. I would say, why is your government, having spent 200 million on this commission of inquiry into FinSAC, hiding the FinSAC report? Is it because you and your wife bought a house from somebody who had been FinSAC'd? You're a hypocrite, Andrew Holness, to be accusing me of anything in relation to FinSAC when you have been a direct beneficiary of the losses of somebody who was FinSAC, who lost their home because of FinSAC.
Again, you go to attacking.
So let's listen to the response of the PNP, because this was a credible argument by Mark Golding, and he passed on an assertion to the Prime Minister that he's the one that should be clearing up his name. Here we go.
My wife, when you, according to the Contractor General's report, benefited from a sweetheart deal that was irregular. You benefited off the backs of the Jamaican people in creating your wealth. You were a connected party with the then Minister of Finance, and you advised and created the FinSAC debacle with high interest rate. You benefited from FinSAC. I did not purchase a FinSAC house. I bought a house on the open market. And again, you come with weaponized lies. Your lies will not work.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at this objectively. You have Mark Golding, he's not under investigation. He has said, and his argument is credible because it has been looked over and been investigated, and he's in the clear. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, is being investigated, and he has the burden to prove that he is not guilty. So in question number 2, which was the final question before the closing statement, the Prime Minister had a burden to say and bury all the corruption innuendos that has been thrusted at him, because he's the one under investigation. So this question number 2 went to the PNP, which brought them to 11 points at this point. So tell me in the comments section if you agree or disagree, because this is my opinion tell me what do you see. So at this point, it's 11-5. Now remember, the closing arguments is worth 3. Who won on the closing arguments? Let's move to the closing arguments.
We now go to closing statements. Now, based on the earlier coin toss, Mr. Mark Golding of the PNP will go first.
I'm not sure if you got the closing argument, so I'm gonna play that again. I lost my screen, so let's get back to the closing arguments, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make sure that you get that upfront and personal, because this was amazing.
Benefited from FinSAC. I did not purchase.
So let's get to it.
Mr. Mark Golding of the PNP will go first.
Okay, so this is the
general election
closing argument. I'm not too sure if you heard it on my screen. I'm going to play it again because I lost my screen there, so I'm not too sure if it went through. So I'm going to do it again, and then I'm going to go to closing arguments. Here we go.
Next week, Wednesday, presents a historic opportunity for the people of Jamaica. After 13 and a half years of belt tightening and austerity, we are finally in a situation where the debt to GDP ratio has achieved, or is on the cusp of achieving, the 60%, which was written into the fiscal rules by Portia Simpson Miller. That means that the fiscal rules and prudent economic management can change gear and look at how we can grow the economy and build a society with a better quality of life for all. We see some serious issues that need to be addressed. 700,000 Jamaicans or thereabouts live on public land, lands where they've built their homes, but they don't have titles. The colonial era law set the period as 60 years of occupation before they can get ownership. We are going to reduce that to 25 years. We're going to give them titles. And that is going to unlock over $1 trillion of wealth, which is now sealed up and quarantined in the old colonial era law that is still on the books. That is why also we're increasing the threshold to 3.5 million. So working families who are struggling to make ends meet can get a little break so they can live a better life. It's why we're going to be removing the tax from the overtime pay of workers earning up to $6 million so they can make it easier in life as well. And when I govern the country as Prime Minister to serve you, I will ensure that accountability and transparency are at the center of what we do, and any hanky-panky, any violation of the public trust will be met with the full force of the law with no protection from me. And that is a huge difference between the government I will lead and the government of Andrew Holness. That is why I'm asking you, on Election Day, next Wednesday, vote for the People's National Party, put your ex beside the head, time come for a better life.
We now invite Dr. Andrew Holness of the JLP to go ahead with your closing statement.
The administration that I lead on your behalf has cut the debt in half. We have created 280,000 new jobs, brought in 85,000 persons into the labor force. We have tripled the minimum wage. We have cut murders by 55% over the last 3 years. You have had no new taxes to worry about. This administration has taken on the previously thought of impossible to solve problems, and we have solved them. We are an administration of performance. In our next term, our pensioners who have worked so hard will get a break. Those earning $6 million or below will pay no income tax. We will give a new income tax rate, which will be graduated, which will see everyone paying lower taxes. You will see 60,000 more houses being brought on the market, with 15% of them dedicated to young people. We will give incentives to developers to build houses for young people. You will see a new transportation system for rural school children coming into being. You will see more work being done on reducing electricity. Our government is a government of performance. This election is about a clear choice. Promise or performance. That's what it is. You have to make a decision. Who can deliver? It is this administration that has taken on the difficult problems, and we have delivered for you. I ask you on election day to vote for what is best for Jamaica. Vote for a government that performs. Vote for the Jamaica Labour Party.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I must say that the Jamaica Labour Party gave the strongest closing argument. So they earned the 3 points. The strongest closing argument. And you can tell me in the comment section if I'm wrong here. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But based on both closing arguments, Andrew Honus, hands down, gave the best closing arguments, so he earned the 3 points. There was 3 points for the closing argument. Mark Golding did not hit the point on the closing argument, but Andrew Honus did. So it brought them to 8 points, but the PNP was at 11, in my opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section. So let me give my closing opinion here. This debate, and this is my closing opinion, ladies and gentlemen, tell me if I'm wrong or I'm on the right track. This debate was focused on leadership for both candidates. Both candidates exercised leadership qualities, hands down. The PM was more forceful, but appeared more unhinged during the course of the debate. It must be recognized that the PM has been leading Jamaica for over 9 years. Therefore, it is expected that the leader of Jamaica would display a more calm and resolute demeanor. The Jamaican people have already entrusted the JLP's their future to the JLP, and under their leadership, it would appear as if the Prime Minister has not acquired his target, and also would appear as if he is slow to the rescue of the grassroots of Jamaicans. At these Jamaicans at the lower end of the scale to rescue them. Is it that he's slow and his slow and calculated approach has clouded the Prime Minister's judgment to stimulate the Jamaican economy? Did he miss the target, hence why he has rushed at this late stage to cut ribbons and then mismanage the school bus system? On the other hand, the opposition Golding has been forceful in pointing out corruption in the government. Golding has made some aggressive plans to stimulate the Jamaican economy. His colleagues have hit the target, focusing on the lower end of the Jamaican class to stimulate growth. The opposition has made somewhat credible arguments. However, he is untested in the role of leadership. The most compelling arguments lie in the corruption realm and the poor sector. However, his growth plan is untested. It would be prudent to ask yourself as Jamaicans, do you think his plan is attainable? Nevertheless, the Jamaican economy is stagnant, with the poorer class feeling the brunt. Therefore, Mark Golding's stimulus plan has some merits. consideration as to the alternative to the present trajectory. So, therefore, my conclusion is the core issues are rapid job creation, cost of living, healthcare, and crime. Therefore, the PM errs on the side of slow, steady reform to growth. That this stifles the lower class, and the opposition emphasizes a fast stimulation of the lower class to grow the economy. Both candidates' approach is plausible. However, the opposition had a stronger debate response in all three debates. But in practicality, who do you think you, the voters, are more comfortable with? In my opinion, Mark Golding and the PNP won all three debates. However, in practicality, I believe the JLP makes and has a practical advantage being in power for 9 years. But I also believe they have squandered a valuable opportunity to grow the economy of Jamaica, and hence are late in their execution of the economic success for the Jamaican people. Leadership is key, and it was all about leadership. So, final, as a result, I believe the winds of change have engaged the sails of victory. However, are these winds strong enough to avoid the shores of defeat? I wonder if you got my comment there. And let me give it to you in writing. And this is my estimation, ladies and gentlemen. So let me get it to you. The winds of change have engaged the sails of victory. Is the winds strong enough to avoid the shores of defeat? Ladies and gentlemen, you are the wind that will carry one of these sails to victory. So on September 3rd, 2025, we will witness who will avoid the shores of defeat. May the best party win. Jamaica land we love. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. This is Naram Promotions, the Real Deal podcast show. And we say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. And we're going to close the show. Ladies and gentlemen, hats off to everyone. God bless you all. Naram Promotions is at you.